sometimes being in a place, an elevated place too early can
Yeah.
actually be a curse to you rather than a blessing. And
Wow.
s-
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening and watching the Major Pain Podcast, the only podcast crafted to guide men like you on unraveling your uniqueness to transform the world around you. If you are a lady joining us, feel comfortable to listen as we hope women learn how to build better men through the golden nuggets we will be sharing and learning. Joining me today is Anugreh talking about how he found his purpose in life as a unique man. Anugreh is a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. He runs his own business called Heart, Hands, and Head, which was created to help Christians find clarity around their calling. While running his business, he is also the worship pastor of Hillsong, Canada. Welcome, Anugreh.
Hey, bro, good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks too for accepting this call. I really appreciate it. It's such an amazing thing to see great men like yourself, doing the things that I would say they're called to do, and also not just accepting the call, but looking for platforms to, share the word and impact lives. I commend you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And I commend you for what you're doing. We're both on a very similar mission together to help a lot of people discover their calling and discover their purpose. So it's good to be able to run this race
Yeah,
alongside you.
honestly. And you know what even strikes me more was that I think, was it you that reached out to me first on Facebook?
Potentially.
Yeah, I remember. And this was around the same time I had different, I don't know if they reached out to you, but there are so many people into the whole coaching thing, and they'll call you and try to be your friend at first. And the next thing they are like selling their program or course to you. So, but when you reached out to me, or just something different. I was like at first, okay, what's this guy up to? Is he trying to make me come on board this program or stuff like that? But no, but instead, you were giving me value. You reached out to me and you were asking me some questions about like what area am I struggling and all those things. And I sensed that sincerity and authenticity coming from you. And I was just like, wow, like this is good. And this is someone I want to have in my network. How does it feel like for you being a life purpose coach, and also you are the lead worship.
Not the lead pastor.
Amen. Sorry, you are the worship pastor at Hillsong. I've admired Hillsong like all along, watching their like worship songs, and I'm like, oh my God, I know there's a lot of practice that goes in that. How does it feel like being a worship pastor at Hillsong?
Um, it's surreal, to be honest. Because it's similar for you, like I grew up like in my teenage years, I grew up in a church where I didn't necessarily feel close to God through the preaching. It was always the worship that kept me.
Mhm.
And of course, Hillsong worship has been around forever now, probably since the late 90s. And it was their music that I think like really helped me connect with God and showed me who He is and really helped me stay all those years. And then when I was 18, I went to Hillsong College, thinking I would only be there for a year, and I did worship music over there, but ended up staying there for 4.5 years. Did my bachelor's in theology over there, did an internship over there. And so it's just now being in the position I'm in, like honestly, Paul, I think it's God's just so faithful in knowing the dreams that are in hearts, because this is probably a dream I've had for years, right?
I
um,
see.
but not really something I set out loud or said really to anyone. I just decided, for years now, where when it comes to serving in church, I'm going to build a church, whatever it looks like, in whatever capacity. I'm going to go where the need is. And I remember for years, Paul, that I actually stepped away from worship and being on the creative team Because when I was in Sydney, there wasn't really that much of a need because you had all the college students who are phenomenal, and you
Mm.
had all the musicians there who are also phenomenal. And I was just needed somewhere else. So I did, I used to, in my first year of college, I used to be on the refresh team. So I used to clean like the glass
Wow.
windows and stuff. And I used to clean the bathrooms, and I used to do that during the week. And then I used to be on creative catering. What that meant was I was essentially preparing food for the musicians and the creatives before they went on, just so that because they would have been rehearsing from 6 a.m. And so I just helped prepare food for them. I did
Wow.
that. I did youth, and then I ended up doing events. And so I did a whole bunch of other things. And then I've just learned that, God is just so faithful. He knows the desires of a heart. And I laid it down for a long, long time. I continued worshiping in my own time. I continued writing music in my own time. I always loved it. It was always a passion of mine.
Mhm.
But to be honest, what is it now? I joined Hillsong Church in 2012. It's 2021. So probably close to about 8 years I laid down worship and being on the creative team. And then just when I moved from San Francisco as part of one of the campuses to here, I think when you do stuff God's way and just be faithful with what's in your hand,
Mhm.
he's the one who puts you in places. Do you know what I mean? Like there's such a big
Yeah.
difference between, you trying to fight your way to get a position you want, and you
Mhm.
try getting around the right people, you try networking with the right people, you
Yeah.
try becoming really friendly with the leader or whoever you need to be, and say the right things and do the right things. And then there's another way where when you're faithful with what God's given you, and then there's almost like a wind on your back. And so
Mm.
for me, my story of getting to this place which is an absolute honor, and honestly pretty undeserving. I think there's a lot more people much more talented than I am. Um, but somehow, like, I never asked for this, but I don't know, like God just in his own grace just aligned the stars and just made it happen. And it's a dream come true, and I love what I get to do. Like, I probably spend too much time on it and I think about it way too much.
Wow, this is great. From all you've said, I can see there's a huge component of service that you dedicated your life to.
Oh yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, and that service is something that I feel a lot of people are not really concerned in doing because they are just focused on the goal, like focused
Yeah,
on maybe
right.
the promotion, focused on that piece that they want from a human sense of reward, right? How are you able to, just stay steadfast in the seven? Were there times that you felt like, oh man, I wish I can, get to this position or stuff like that? What do you have to say about that?
Honestly, I just think life, people overcomplicate it. And that's a big reason I actually started my business as well. I hate even calling it business, but why I started my coaching program, because even when people think about calling, right, and purpose,
Mhm, mhm,
like when life is so much more about being faithful with what God's put in your hand right now, and consistently, like whatever God's put in your hand, just being faithful with it and trusting God that along the way He'll take you to where you need to be. It's just all about being faithful with what's in your hand. And that honestly, that's all I've ever done. I talk about it this way, like even when it comes to calling and purpose, I think of it more in terms of like a compass, right? So when God told Abraham, go, he just got up and went. He didn't even know where he was going. And all I tell people a lot of the time is, if you know the general vicinity of where God has called you to go, right? If you know the general direction of where God's called you to go, just start walking in that general direction. You don't need Google Maps. You don't need like the exact coordinate and the exact route to get there. Just
mhm.
start walking northeast, or just start walking south, or just start walking southwest, Like
Yeah.
wherever God has called you, just walk in that general direction and trust God to make those minor adjustments along the way. And it's actually crazy because I think as I've continued being faithful with what's in my hand, there's no wasted season with God.
Wow.
Like even with Like, for example, when I was cleaning the bathrooms, and even like for Hillsong conferences, which are massive, conferences used to finish at 10:30, and we were there till like 2 a.m. in the morning, cleaning and
Wow.
vacuuming the entire place. And these are massive arenas. And we did bump outs until 4 a.m. in the morning. And I think about like all those stuff, and then fast forward to my time in San Francisco, and now God's put me in a position where I'm overseeing teams
Mhm.
that I've got to do with the cleaning, that I've got to do with the hosting, that I've got to do with this. And somehow now I have this experiential knowledge that has
Mhm.
come in use. And I never thought, like, I was just like, oh, it's just a season. But it's like, no, God knew exactly what he was doing. And even if it's not feeling like something useful, he's always working on your character. And I'm so grateful for
Yeah.
anonymity. Like, I actually
Mhm.
miss it. You know, our church is like blessed to have quite a large influence.
Yeah.
Um, it's not really something to be jealous of when, you know, when some of the team have such large influence, because it comes with a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot of unseen things.
Mhm.
And so like forever, whoever's listening, don't desire the spotlight so much, because once you get there, you know, like, it comes with its stuff.
Wow.
There's actually something really good about anonymity, where you get to make mistakes. Like, I mean, it
Mhm.
was like David, right? When he's with the
Yeah.
sheep and he's with like killing the lion and the bears and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He had space to make mistakes. He had space to try things. He had time to solve stuff out in his own heart. But if you ask God for a platform too fast, and you haven't got those things right, you're hurting other people, you're hurting
Mhm.
yourself along the way, and you might burn out whilst doing the thing God's called you to do. Sometimes being in a place, an elevated place too early, can
Yeah.
actually be a curse to you rather than a blessing. And
Wow.
so I think it's like, for me, when you're saying like just service, it's like, just be faithful with God, what God's put in your hand, and just trust him. Like, he's got you. Don't and you know what? He's more concerned about who you are than what you can do or what can happen through
Mm.
you. You know, he's concerned about your sanctification, your character. He's concerned about you as an individual. The story of Jonah, right? It's a
Yeah.
very interesting one.
Yeah.
Some people think that Jonah was sent to Nineveh to save the Ninevites. But another way to look at the story is Jonah needed to be sent to the Ninevites to save himself. Like, he was the corrupt one, and he
Yeah.
was the one that needed sanctification. And so sometimes when we're serving people, it's actually us that needs to be sanctified. And we think that, you know, we're going to be the blessing to other people, but really it's through the faithfulness and the service that that God actually works in your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
You you gave a lot of nuggets within this. See, normally I take notes and I should drop in when I'm trying to write it, and then you drop in it all. I'm like, oh my God, this is nugget overload. Which is great, which is great. I really like your perception towards that character development and experiential knowledge that you said that comes
Yeah.
through serving. And from what you're saying is that God takes us through process to, refine us such that when we get to serve in certain capacity, like a high level capacity, we now have experience and we have knowledge that we bring in to the team to
Yeah.
build other people's character. So therefore, if we are not paying attention to those things that God is doing in our life, when we get to that level, the platform is likely to fall on us. I see. Wow, this is such a great insight. And it then brings me back to the whole word purpose, which is commonly used. I feel like right now is overused, that the word purpose is not having any purpose anymore. It's not being meaningful. But again, if we had to add life first, meaning life purpose, I feel like that's something that so many people are kind of still navigating and questioning. And I want to ask you, can you clarify what the term life purpose mean?
Yeah, I think the scripture comes to mind where it's everything you do, do it for the glory of God, right? I think that's one of the highest purposes we have as human beings. And that's why I named program, heart, hands, and head. And it all comes down to this: use what's
Mm-hmm.
in your hand to fulfill what's in your heart. Use what's in your hand to fulfill what's in your heart. And the idea behind that is, I think our purposes is honestly, whatever we do it to bless others and for kingdom purposes. Whatever
Wow.
you do, just attach kingdom purpose to it. And that's you living in your purpose. It's not that complicated. It's honestly not complicated. It's not the one day when. No,
Uh-huh.
it's like if you're a video editor, use it for the glory of God. If you are a barista, you be the best barista that all of Toronto has ever seen. It gives glory to God. You have an
Amazing.
opportunity to you have an opportunity to touch people and bless people. Do it for the glory of God if that's what you're passionate about. If
Mm-hmm.
you're passionate about, being an Uber driver, use it for the glory of God. And every time you just live your life with kingdom purposes attached to it, you're fully living in your purpose. Um,
Wow.
I think there's there's two ways you can also think about it as well. That's a general way to think about it. A more specific way is, if God then does call you to something specific, that's different.
Okay.
But honestly, up until that point, you can live so much of your life thinking about, all right, what are the desires and dreams that God has put in my heart? Your
Mm-hmm.
desires and dreams are actually not bad things. We believe they're from God. Scripture talks about desires being from God. So what are those desires?
Yeah.
Put those desires towards kingdom purposes, and then use what's in your hand. What's in your hand are your natural giftings and talents. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, if it's in your heart to um, uh, be an answer to world hunger, right? Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And what you've got in your hand is you're good at taking photos, right?
Yeah.
So use what's in your hand to fulfill what's in your heart. It's logical, right? Like, God's not trying to make
Wow.
it complicated. And use it for kingdom purposes, and you're done. But you know what?
Wow.
God might ask you to do something a bit more specific outside of your comfort zone. Obey him in that. But I think God actually gives us more freedom than we actually think he does. He's not a controlling parent or a
Mm.
controlling, he's not micromanaging you. He gives us freedom
Yeah.
to follow him, and to uh, live, yeah, do use what we have for kingdom purposes.
When you're talking about what's in your hand, there was this day I was driving and I got some kind of administration, and it it has to do with this word what's in your hand. And I remembered Moses when the children of Israel was
Correct.
stuck. Yeah, they were like Pharaoh coming with his army and everything, and they had the Red Sea right before them, and they couldn't like go forward. And then Moses was like, "Hey God, like, see what's up. This is it. Like, are we going to just perish right here?" And children of Israel were calling on Moses, and Moses calling on God and everything. And God asked him, he said, "What's in your hand?" And he said, "It's a rod." You know, and
That's right.
that thing dawned on me, just clicked that, yeah, like we have gifts and talents in our hands that we can use, that God used those things as a tool, for us to cause an impact in the world, for us to clear the Red Sea and have people walk across it and everything. And which really makes so much sense to what you're saying. However, but I believe you will agree with me that there are some people, especially you've come across some clients who do not know. First of all, they don't know their talent, they don't know themselves, they don't know their personality, they don't even know if they have hands, how much more something in the hand, you understand? So, and that kind of causes something they would tag, say, purpose anxiety. And when it comes to purpose anxiety, how would you say, or what steps would you advise someone to take when it comes to, say, finding their purpose in life if they are not sure about their talent, their hands, what's in their hands?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, funny thing actually is with not all of them, but a couple of clients who came in, they had a kind of an idea of what's in the heart and a kind of an idea what's on their hands. And then they walk away and then ask them, so what did you figure out? They're just like, oh, I figured out I knew the answer before. I just needed to be more sure of it.
Wow.
And it's true, right? Like, because the thing is, we actually know what we excel at most of the time. We just need to grow in confidence. We already know what God's put on our hearts. We're sometimes just too scared to admit it or not bold enough to take the steps. Paul, you were saying at the start, so I'm a Gallup Strengths Coach,
Mhm.
and what that is, it's an assessment that helps you find out what your natural strengths are. And I remember when I did that back in maybe 2015 or something like that, it was a game changer for me because that's the one of the tools that helped me discover my natural giftings and my natural strengths. And the basic idea is as you do that assessment and it helps you figure out what you're naturally good at, it's very simple. Just do more of that. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're good at, just do a whole lot more of that. Don't try to be something you're not. It's like asking Michael Jordan to spend more time on math than he does on basketball. Like, it's silly. Like, and it's true with your strengths, they actually act as a multiplier,
Wow.
meaning that like even if you think about stocks, right?
Mhm.
If like let's say you put a time investment of 1 hour into math and 1 hour into basketball, for
Mhm.
Michael Jordan, for every hour he puts into basketball, he gets a 10x result. But for every hour he puts into math, he gets like a 2.5x
Mhm.
result. And so I think the more you maximize and double down on your strengths and the unique way God has made you, the more
Yeah.
of a blessing you can be to the world. And so that assessment was very, very helpful for me. So
Do you
yeah,
mind if I
any of the
ask what your
yeah.
results, what your strengths are, like your top five strengths?
Yeah, mine is futuristic, activator, belief, consistency, and relator.
Wow, amazing. I see that in you. I see that in you.
How about you?
Yeah, cheers to futuristic. Yeah, I'm futuristic also.
Yes.
Strategic, positivity,
Mm,
individualization, and activator. So
nice. There you go.
yeah,
Two in common.
I'm telling you. And I got to know about Gallup. I was 2 years ago. My mentor, she was the one that gave me the book, and I was going through a rough stage of my life, extremely rough. And she gave me that book. I took the quiz, and the result came out, and I read the book, and I saw what each strength had to say about me, and I was like, oh my god. And I still have some secondary like strength which is developer, and I was like, now I know why I am this way, why I help people, like um nurture them and help them grow and help them activate and do this. And I started forgiving myself for the things I felt like people were using me. It gave me this sense of awareness that,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
this is my strength and this is how I can now serve. So it awakened and activated me to live more purposefully than just passively. Yeah. I
Absolutely.
have met one other strength finder coach. I feel like there are not so many. There's this guy I met on Instagram who we started talking about strength finders. And it's just interesting that the more people take this quiz, because I know there are a lot of personality quiz out there. And like there's the Maya breaks, which I really like. It really says a lot about someone. But then I noticed that the Gallup Strength Finders quiz is the next best thing. I would say anyone, if you're listening, if you're
Yeah.
watching, take it. And if you want to have more conversation with Anugreh about it, feel free to reach out to him. He's certified in that, and he will be able to help you navigate that as well. I know most coaches, I see coaching sometime as this kind of, how the Shaolin monks are, where you go, you do your practice under Master Shifu for like maybe 2, 3 years or something. And then he gives you one final test and you do it, and it's like, okay, you are good to go now. You but then what I'm trying to say is that like you, for instance, did you have someone that coached you or mentored you into life purpose coaching, or was it something that you learned yourself through your experience in life?
Yeah, one of my biggest mentors. So when I was in Hillsong College in Sydney, I interned under one of the pastors over there,
Mhm.
and thought I was only going to do a year with him. But he ended up being asked to move out to San Francisco to plant one of our campuses over there. So I moved out at the same time, and he's just been a friend and a mentor for years, and just, always, like, honestly, world-class leader.
Mm.
And just the way he conducts and lives his life and leads, phenomenal preacher, phenomenal leader. So he played a huge role in my life to help pull out the gold in me. And
Wow.
honestly, he rebuked me when I needed to be rebuked. um, I said, yeah, sometimes I was like ticked off at him, but he said the stuff that other people wouldn't
Mm.
say. So it was through him actually that I got introduced into uh, Gallup, because we were doing it for all our team leaders over there
Yeah.
in Sydney, and then I just found myself naturally inclining myself towards. I started asking everyone, it's like, what are your strengths? And then I started telling them about their strengths,
Wow.
and started like teaching them. And then it was an opportunity that just showed up out of nowhere. So I just decided to take the plunge and get certified and learn about it. And
Wow.
yeah, that's a whole other story about God's timing and providence.
Amazing. You said something earlier where you're talking about this, your mentor that, he rebuked you the time that you needed to be. And I feel like that's one thing a lot of people are scared of when it comes to mentorship and coaching, right? That fear of, someone maybe not approving certain things you're doing, or maybe just calling you out. What do you think when we talk about modern day masculinity? How do you feel about like men these days, this day and age? Do you feel or think or see that they are being open to receiving those feedback, and would you say they are open to being called out at the point where they need to be called out? Like, what do you think about that?
Just a couple observations that I do see some guys scared to go all in for God, because it's you see some Christian men who are kind of just skirting with the line, like, how much can I kind of be relevant to the world and still be a Christian, and kind of like, you know what I mean? And it's just like kind of playing with the line, and kind of sometimes scared just to go all in, because I think our Christian culture is like a pendulum swing, right?
Yeah.
We're always correcting. So for example, like grace and works, right? Like we lived, you and I probably grew up in a time when it's all about works.
Yeah.
And then we saw the big shift to grace, right?
Exactly.
And now we're kind of like coming back in the middle. And I think there's a reaction, at least in the Americas, of kind of like weird Christians, like Christians who were like too Christian-y, like, and they would just ended up having their own like Christian culture. And I think there's a reaction to that, where a lot of churches are now trying to look so much like the world as well. And so I think there's a reaction of not wanting to be labeled as like too Christian. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a bit too religious. He's like a bit too spiritual.
Yeah.
And there's a reaction to that, because they still want to be relevant to the world. And so I think, I don't know, that's just one of my few observations, that some guys, like, they're just like, oh, I don't want to, like, I want to be a Christian, and definitely I love Jesus, but like, I don't want to like be too spiritual. And to that, honestly, I just think that the story of the woman who anointed Jesus's feet with oil, I think about that story, and that's a story of just like stupidly lavish worship, like just unreal how lavish that worship was. The woman didn't care that she spent an entire year's worth of money. She didn't care what she looked like. She just gave it all without thinking. And I'm like, if there's one thing I'm happy to lavishly give towards and lavishly do, I would rather be known as someone who like spends too much time with Jesus, or is like too spiritual, than the other way around.
I see.
Yeah, so that's just one of my observations. I'm definitely not the best, I don't spend too much time observing that.
I feel like one reason could also be because of, the environment that, we find ourselves in. Say, you and I, with the way we've lived our life and with the things we know, we've been able to shield ourselves and put ourselves in some position that a lot of men are not maybe able to take that path. You understand? So because we are on that path, to an extent, we might not really get to know what's happening on the other side, except,
You're
we
right.
hear about it. We know a friend who knows a friend that is going through A, B, C, and D, and that says those things. But again, it still brings us back to, okay, as coaches, right? And we're trying to see, we paving the path, we building thousand parts to make it a little bit more attractive and appealing for this man to say, okay, guys, come work on this part, because this is the right part. And, this is the part that would get you to that true success. And, this is the part that God has called us to live, especially as men and all those things. However, I know it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of selflessness too, but then it's crucial that one reason I'm hosting this podcast is because this is one of those medium and means that we're using to reach out to those men, to let them know that, okay, this is the kind of life, this is why it's important. You understand, right? And this brings me to actually the next question again, because, it's one thing for us to work on this path, but I want you to share, like, why is it important for, say, a man to have some core principles? First of all, what are the core principles do you think a man can work with, especially now in this day and age that temptation is always lurking around? What are those core principles that probably has helped you, but you feel like other men can benefit if they are to start practicing and inserting those principles in their day-to-day life?
Yeah. So the principles in terms of like purity or in general?
In general.
I think one of the biggest principles is, like when you go back to Genesis 1 and 2, and you just learn that people are made in the image of God. Every single person is made in the image of God, even the person that drives you nuts, even the person that's crazy, even the person who is mean and rude, even the person who bullies, even the terrorist is a person made in the image of God, even,
Yeah.
and if they're made in the image of God, they're sacred human beings. And that's just, I think, and when you start thinking of that, and if I start thinking of you, like, all right, you are a son of God. I think of my wife Holly, she's a daughter of God. That actually requires me to treat you a certain way, because you're messing with someone's family, and you're messing with God's family when you do that. And I think there's a sacredness to humanity that we've lost a little bit. We kind of demean each other too much. And so you know what? So like when I get irritated at people, I've just got to like step back and be like, no. Like this person is actually made in the image of God.
Yeah.
This is God's child.
Yeah.
Even if they don't agree with me, even though they might be completely different to me, and even like for example, like over here, like we've had trouble with our neighbor. He's been kind of harassing us, and he's vandalized our door, and
Oh, wow.
It's not been a great situation. And then, but you know what? Sometimes I step back and like we have to pray for him, because you know what? Like he's God's child at the end of the day. And so I think that's one of the core principles I live with. I just, love God, love people. I think I'm not too complicated. I think if you just keep, as a man, like spending, I mean, Paul, like I can't even tell you, like I've just been thinking about the simplicity of devotional time every single day.
Yeah.
Every person needs to spend time with God. It's honestly non-negotiable, because, and it's not in a way to be legalistic that you have to. I say that we need to is because I don't know about you, but especially if you decide to step out into the God call on your life, you're going to be doing so many stuff that are outside of your comfort zone. And I don't know about everyone else, but like I desperately need God every flipping day of my life. Otherwise I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm actually done. Like I'm not even spending time with God because like I actually need to.
Yeah.
Like I joke. I spoke with someone on my on our creative team, and then
Mhm.
we were just talking, and I mentioned something. So for our when we serve at church, Holly and I, the call time for the creatives are at 6 a.m. in the morning because we need to bump in a truck on a Sunday
Yeah.
and set the entire thing up. And I've just decided a long time ago, I'm going to read my Bible before I go, because you can't pour into others if you yourself are not full,
Yeah.
right? And we're coming there to serve. And then the conversation just came up about me and Holly waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning so we can
Mhm.
read our Bible before we go to church. I don't know about you, but I need him to show up. Otherwise, I'm
Yeah.
done when I can't lead without him. Otherwise,
Wow.
I'm not a good human. I don't make good leadership decisions. I don't lead with strength. And so I think, yeah, I think two core principles is just love God, love people. And with loving God, like I I more and more than ever, I'm like, man, I just actually need him to show up in my life. Otherwise, like,
That's true. Yeah. No, I get you honestly. And I would say I resonate with every single thing you said, because there are days in my life I get to a point wherein I need to take a step back. There's something I'm not doing well lately, and I say my devotion, I feel it that it's not as hot
100%.
as how it used to be. Why? Because I'm feeling depleted. I feel I'm lacking energy. I'm lacking inspiration. I'm lacking creativity. I'm lacking that grease, that fire that I have when I know I've spent enough time, like with God in my devotion and all those things. And
Yeah,
which brings me to what you're saying. It sounds like a man needs to, first of all, identify where he draws energy and inspiration from. And with with that, I feel like the ultimate place to draw energy and inspiration from is from God, right?
yeah,
Because
totally.
that is the everlasting source of joy and inspiration. It's not substance. It's not other substance, because those things fade away. Besides, they destroy one's health. But the healthy way is having that relationship with God, because He's the giver of wisdom. He's the giver of knowledge, and He
Totally.
He knows how to make he knows how to transform us from inside out. And
Totally.
you also said something that makes me think of forgiveness and acceptance when you're talking about the principles that a man should have, where you say, love God, love people. And if you love God and love people, you tend to forgive them, because you know that, yes, this person is made with the image, is made from the image of God, and therefore they still have chances to just act like a human. And
Yeah.
you forgive them, and you also see the need to pray for them. And that really not change the whole dynamics of how a man would respond to certain issues and challenges he faces in life. That's very good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Awesome. Okay. So just two more questions and we'll
Yeah, of
wrap
course.
this up. Okay. We both are life purpose coach. I know that our tools might vary, but the goal is to help people identify their life purpose. Would you please give us some insight on how you have been able to how you run your program, and what are the benefits to people's life?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, so my program's called Heart, Hands, and Head, and pretty much it's very straightforward. I even joke with people who I get on the phone with. I'm like, you actually don't need to do my course because I've told you everything you need to, and the exact same thing's going to happen now.
Mhm.
Where it's where I think all you need to do is spend time thinking about what has God put on your heart, what are the dreams and desires God has put on your heart. Spend time thinking about them, dream, think back to your childhood, spend time trying to uncover them. Think about the stuff you love, think about the stuff you hate. What are the stuff that really get you going? Just think about that. Then number two, what's in your hands? So what are your natural strengths and giftings, and what are your current opportunities? And number three, what's in your head? And that's all about what are the leadership principles you need to know. What's the character? Who do you need to be in order to live that out? And
Mhm.
all you need to do is use what's in your hand to fulfill what's in your heart. And that's all we spend time doing. We spend a couple of weeks there. We spend a couple of weeks on what's in your hand,
Mhm.
and then a couple weeks spending on what's in your head. And then I really just encourage people throughout the process to keep on stepping out on a weekly basis and thinking about, what are the dreams, what are the visions that God has put in your heart, and just encouraging people to go for it, and figuring out their why, and just teaching people not to overcomplicate it. Whereas just living the call of God is just a daily thing, is being faithful on a daily basis, stepping out on a daily basis. And, just even going back to what I was talking about with the devotionals, right? Every time you step out of the boat, you actually need the power of God in your life. And it's, and if you don't feel the need for spending time with God, it's just like, I would maybe say that maybe you're living a bit too comfortable, and maybe you're, like maybe you need to get yourself out there, because if you actually started to do the things that God's called you to do, my friend, you're going to be on your knees all the time.
That's true.
Because if it's one, we should, I think us as believers, right, we should be at a place where we're like, if God doesn't show up, we're screwed. Like that should be our attitude in the stuff we do. And so
Honestly,
that's kind of like the big way that I help run a lot of things in my program.
I like that challenge that you pose in, wherein you say, if you are in a place whereby if God doesn't show up right now, I'm done. And that was a pastor, one of my pastor in Nigeria. He said that if your dream isn't so big that it frightens you, then you're not dreaming. And it also brings me back to that scripture that says the just shall live by faith, wherein we need faith almost every day of our life to live and to push forward. And just like what you say, it's more like if everything is just happening so smooth, so comfy, and all those things, it means that you are really in the comfort zone. And the comfort zone has no growth inside of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know what's another thing I always try? I tell the people that not even clients and the people who I help, just in my daily life, we should always be asking the question, right? Like, God's given us certain gifts and talents, and sometimes we hesitate to live them out because of insecurity. That's one thing, right?
Yeah.
But we've also got to switch it on the other side and say, all right, well, Paul, if you didn't do what you did, how many people are you robbing the blessing from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've actually got to think, you know what? If I don't step up and lead every day and take care of my soul and take care of my spirit, there's actually a cost.
Yeah.
There's people who are not going to be impacted because I didn't step up today, because I didn't do what God's called me to do. There's people on the other side of our obedience. And sometimes it's a good way to like switch your mentality, because sometimes we think it's like, when I live out my purpose, it's all about me realizing myself. It's just like, no, it's actually, there's a need, and there's a need that needs to be filled, and there's people that need to be blessed. And by us being so caught up in our own things, you're actually robbing other people of the blessing.
That's so true.
If Mother Teresa spent all her time thinking about, oh, should I go and do that? Should I, how many people would missed out on the blessing of who she is?
Very true.
And that's the thing, right? She didn't do it so that she can say, I'm living in my purpose. Like, this is so cool. Like, yeah, that's cool. But the real goal is impacting the lives of people and helping them. And so we actually got to ask ourselves, what's going to be the cost if I don't step out into my purpose? There's a cost.
There's a cost.
And the Bible actually is pretty clear. Like, there's going to be read the parable of the talents. There's going to be an account taken in heaven about what you did with what God has entrusted you with.
That's true.
And to who much is given, much is required. And I think for anyone living in Canada, you have been given much. For two people who have moved to Canada and to the Americas, this is one of the most blessed nations. And anyone who lives in the Americas, you've been given much. And much is actually required.
That's very true. Very, very true. Sometimes I think one thing that really changed my perception, even to my coaching business, is to show up for that one person, because that one person is a generation I see. I see that one person as a generation, and I see that one person as an influencer, because that one person would affect people they come in contact with at work, in their family, every single thing. So that really gives me that sense of responsibility. And just like the last guest, Paul, he said that he needs to work on himself in order for him to be able to be a true influencer or an agent of change to the next person. And just like piggyback to when you said that you need to do your devotion so that you can feel yourself in order for you to pour into other people. Yeah, I really like how purpose, from all this conversation we've had, there's one word that just keep coming out, that's serving other people.
Totally.
Yeah, and it just gives us this whole idea that we need to be selfless, because that's what we're called to do. It's not really about us, it's about God's plan, God's purpose. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So, Anugreh, is there any final words you want to say to those listening and watching, and where can they find you?
I think for the people who are listening, I just encourage you. Sometimes you can feel like, I don't have what it takes, I'm not the right person. I'm just encouraged by this. Like, the verse that has really framed my life, and sometimes I wish people would have known me for decades. I love the verse where it's just like, God uses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise.
Wow.
And I feel like that's my life verse. Like, I am not brilliant in any way. I'm just the fool that God chose. And there's comfort in that, because actually God needs fools, because everyone else is just going to take the glory for themselves. At least I know, I know where I am by the grace of God and only by him. So I can give him the glory.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people who are watching or listening, like, I think all God is asking for is availability. And just putting your hand up and saying, you know what, God, like, wherever you go, I'll go. If you ask me to serve here, and you ask me to be a light to this community or get involved with this, like, God, I'll go. And you know what? Just trust God that as you do that thing, he'll anoint you for it. That's it. And just believe it with all your heart that you've been anointed for what God has appointed you to. And that's it. And just live there. And it's not that complicated. And I think there's also a power to just saying yes to opportunities that come your way, opportunities where you can bless people, even if they seem out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Just get good at stepping out all the time. Do the small things that help you step out. Like, even for me, like, I think of, like, even the tiny little opportunities that I get, I say yes to them, because I know that it's just like, okay, if I do this, it'll set me up for this. It's like getting tallies on the wall. When I was in Sydney for my mentor, he asked me to, I used to get his CDs after church every single week, and he would ask me to make sermon notes on his things and transcribe everything. So I just used to, I've like transcribed like 30, 40 of his sermons, and I got to see how much scripture he used. I got to see how he structured everything. And, it's unglamorous at that moment.
Yeah.
But you know what? Just by that small step out, now when I do get the opportunity to preach, I have that in my back pocket.
Yeah.
And, some people are looking for the spotlight, when God is just saying, hey, if you have a connect group, or if you have a cell group, or whatever people call it during the week, maybe you do feel like God has called you to preach. Awesome. Well, why don't you just start by encouraging the person at the door? Because that's exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
Except one is just saying it to one person, and another one's saying it to a couple hundred people, to 1,000 people.
Makes sense.
So it's so I think it's consistently just stepping out. So I think it's number one, like, don't discount yourself, because God can use the foolish things to shame the wise. And then I think number two is just go for it, and just believe with all your heart that I'm God's anointed. and stop waiting for the perfect opportunity. Like God
Yeah.
has significant things that he wants to do through every single person. Like none of us are here by accident, right?
Yeah.
All of us are here with a purpose.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so yeah, that's what I would say.
That's profound, man. That's profound. Thank you. And where can the listeners and those viewing, where can they find you?
Find me on Instagram. It's at Anugreh. Or you're welcome to look at my Facebook as well, Anugreh Sapra. My name's kind of unique, so it won't be too hard to find me if you can spell it right. But both those are two good places.
All right. Okay. Awesome. I would drop the links in the description, both on YouTube and also in the podcast. Well, Anugreh, thank you so much for taking out time to grace us with your presence and also sharing all the wisdom and golden nuggets that you have so far. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Guess what? This isn't the last time you're coming in on this podcast. I feel like there's so much that we have to unpack, honestly. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast. It was so awesome having Anugreh join us this week. And if you are new to my YouTube channel, please kindly subscribe. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, Anchor, kindly follow, subscribe. If you are coming across this post on social media or anywhere, please feel free to engage and share your thoughts. We really love to hear from you and also want to build a community of unique masculinity. Yes, let's do this. I wish you the best and I see you in the next episode. Take care and have a nice day. Cheers, guys.